The Huffington Post, CNN, Yahoo, San Francisco Chronicle, and further.
Michael has worked closely with many social organizations. He has been an active participant in the Big Brother Big Sister, an executive volunteer with Defiant Adventures, and a member of the UNICEF's Next Generation. And it's now my great pleasure to introduce Mr. Michael DuDell.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for coming out. So there's a performance before I talk, so I'm gonna let Tess take it away.
Alright guys, I made a rap. It was for Mr. Michael. I hope you guys like it. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and start. Welcome to Shoot Ridge, yeah, my name is Tess. And this is our group. Wait, my bad, I'm so sorry. Anyways, welcome to Shoot Ridge, yeah, my name is Tess. Our school is good, yeah, it's the best. I hope you like it here and I hope you like us. Cause we do things no one else ever does. This is Mr. Wayne, yeah, he does his name. One of his business like it ain't nothing. In his classroom, make sure we a leader. Cause once we are, our business is the keeper. Now, hey, Mr. Michael, I heard about you. So come on the stage and show us how you do.
Round of applause for Tess, that's awesome. I've had a lot of openers over the years, but never a rap, so I'm really happy that she did that. Yeah, so my name is Michael Parrish DuDell. How's my sound? Too loud, too soft? Oh, A1. I don't even know what that means. Is that good? That's a good thing? That's a sauce, right? That's a steak sauce. All right, I'm good. So it's so funny why I'm here, I'll tell you, because I didn't go to this high school. My girlfriend went to this high school years ago. We're in town for a wedding, and this whole thing sort of happened. So I'm really excited to be here. It's so funny, earlier we found out that one of my teachers from high school in Tampa, Florida, where I grew up, actually teaches at this school. Mr. Larry, back there? Yep, there we go. So how funny is it that 13 years later, I'm 31 years old, 13 years later, one of my teachers from high school now teaches here. That's sort of strange. So as you heard before, I've done a lot of really different things in media and in business, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story, what I've learned along the way. How many people know Shark Tank on ABC? Okay, so I wrote the official business book for Shark Tank. We're going to talk about that experience. I'm going to give you some gossip on the sharks, and then I'm going to open it up for questions from everyone. So let's start. There I am, right there. The story starts when I was about 4 years old, which this is the most adorable I've ever been, by the way. I topped right there at 4. And like I said, I'm from Tampa, so the Busch Gardens shirt, of course, is from Tampa. So when I was a little kid, I really loved to sing, and I really loved to act and to perform, and that actually turned out being most of my life. For 20 years, from the age of 4 to 24, I was on the stage. By the time I went to college, I'd been in over 100 productions. I went to a performing arts high school. I went to a college called Cincinnati Conservatory of Music at the University of Cincinnati, which at the time was the #1 musical theater program. Really, really intense school. I graduated, I moved to New York, I got an agent, I started working all around the country, and I was really, really miserable. I hated it. And I think some people will find this later in life as you start to pursue your dreams. You reach a place where you have to ask yourself, am I doing what I'm doing because I love it? Or am I doing what I'm doing because I've always done it? And that's a really difficult question, and one I had to ask myself at 24 years old. And I asked myself that question shortly after wearing this little getup, which is, I'm brave enough to show you a picture of me in a green unitard, which I have to get some points for that. So I was doing Wizard of Oz, and I was in Texas on the tour, and I found myself backstage wearing this outfit at 24 years old, and I was really unhappy, and I wanted to leave, and after years of trying to get the courage to do something else, I finally caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, and I said, you know, joke's over, I'm getting out of here. So I called my agent, and I told him I was coming back to New York. I went back, I left my agency, and I started from scratch. And this was at 24 years old, which is really difficult because remember, I have a degree in musical theater. You can't do a lot with that degree, especially if you're not in musical theater. And so I had to figure out what I was going to do with my life with no other experience, with no other training, with no other credibility, how I was going to create a career. Let's move along because that picture is disturbing. So this was in 2007. I was 24 years old, right before Twitter came out. Twitter wasn't a thing yet, and digital media was still really new. Nobody wanted a job in digital media. People didn't think digital media was going to last. And so I ended up getting a senior level job, which paid like nothing, by the way, but it was still a senior level job, at a site called ecorazzi.com. which has changed a lot over the years. But from 2007 to 2009, it was probably one of the leading green sites online. Time magazine recognized us. By the time I left, we were getting millions and millions of hits a month. And it was an incredible experience to create content, to be a part of this digital media revolution that was happening, and to get a ton of experiences speaking and consulting, because what we did is we really attracted millennials, 18 to 32-year-olds, and a lot of companies wanted to figure out how to do that. And so I was eventually approached by American Express. They were creating a charge card geared towards millennials, and they wanted some help. And so they asked me if I would come on board for about a year and work with them to help develop this card, which I did. And from there, I started to work for this guy named Seth Godin. Does anyone know Seth Godin? All right, homework assignment. Go home or go to your classroom and Google Seth Godin. He's the smartest guy you'll ever meet. He has 12 books, numerous TED Talks, has sold tons of companies. He's really respected in the marketing world. And he started a publishing company with Amazon, and we published business authors in a completely different way, this hybrid model. And I was the managing editor there. And it was really terrifying to work for Seth because I had never worked in publishing before. And when I applied for the job, the truth is, when I heard about the job, I didn't apply. I said to myself, there's no way you're going to get hired. You have some media experience, but why is this guy going to hire you for a publishing company? And I was at lunch with a friend of mine from college, and I told her about this. I said, I'm not going to apply. I'm never going to get it. And she's like, what? You're an idiot. Like, you are, just go and apply. Put the time in and apply. And I applied. There were 1,000 people that applied. 12 of us were called in for a big group interview, and he chose 6 of us. And that really opened the door to my career. If I hadn't done that, I'd be in a very different place today. So I'm grateful to that friend for making me do it. Eventually, I left Domino, and I went to go work for GE as the editor-in-chief of ecoimagination.com, which is their sustainable innovation and business site, and ran that for a while. And about a year into that, I knew that I wasn't going to be at GE forever. I'd always been very entrepreneurial, but I was never really an entrepreneur because I hadn't really started my own company. And as you get older, you start to learn it gets harder and harder and harder to do it. And so I thought, this is the time, I gotta do it, I gotta start my company. And so I left GE, and I started my first company called Race and Vine, which is actually the street that I lived on in Cincinnati. I lived in an apartment between Race and Vine and College, and there's a bigger story to that name. But I started this company, and it was a consultancy helping companies figure out how to tell their story better online via content marketing, right? And how to appeal to a younger generation, the millennials, 18 to 32-year-olds. And again, a terrifying thing to start your own company, to leave something that's been successful and to go do your own thing. But the company worked, and we were profitable and successful, and it was really great. But I knew that being a consultant wasn't the only thing I wanted to do. I've always had a dream and a desire to work in media. I love small business, I love startups and entrepreneur stuff, but ultimately, I'm the person that stands in front of the camera and talks about it, and that's something I wanted to be doing. And just around that time, I got an offer to write the book for Shark Tank, and this is a great story. I was on the train on the way home one day. I live in New York City, and when you start your first company, when you start any company, it is a 24/7 job. For about a year, I'm not joking when I say I was working 7 days a week, going into the office 7 days a week. And there was this one day, it was a Tuesday, I'll never forget it. I had blocked out this period in my calendar where I had some time off. I had no client meetings. And I said, I'm gonna leave the office at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm gonna go to Whole Foods. I'm gonna get some dinner. I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna watch Netflix all night. And I was looking forward to this day for so long. And I get the food from Whole Foods, and I get on the train, and I'm on the train for 20 minutes, and I get a call from my literary agent. And she's like, hey, how you doing? And I'm like, hey, good. She's like, so, do you want to write the business book for Shark Tank? And I was like, yeah, absolutely, I'd love to write the business book for Shark Tank. And she goes, well, here's the thing. It's moving really fast. I need to have your press kit, and I need to have writing samples by tomorrow morning at 7 a.m., right? My writing samples were really old. I'd been an editor for so long that I hadn't had to submit writing samples for a while, and my press kit was terrible and ugly and out of date. And so I had to have it by 7 in the morning, and so I had a choice. Do I want to eat dinner and watch Netflix, or do I want to stay up all night and do this? So I went home, and I rushed to my computer, and I started working on my press kit, and I started working on my writing samples, and at 1 in the morning I finished, and I emailed them off, and I realized that I had left my Whole Foods bag right by my door. All the food was like spoiled, and I hadn't even eaten dinner. But it was worth it, because a few weeks later I ended up getting the deal, and I went down to Florida temporarily to write the book. Because as I'm about to explain to you, there was a bigger challenge with this book than just it being my first book. They only gave me 30 days to write the whole book. That's crazy. That's 1,950 words a day, every single day. Here's the book right here. It ended up being like 65 or 68,000 words in 30 days. That's crazy. And so in order to do this, in order to do this successfully, I had to make some big choices. I had to leave my business, which ultimately ended up nearly killing the business. I had to put all my clients on hold. I had to leave New York and go back down to Tampa, Florida, where I'm from, lock myself in a room, and write 1,950 words a day, every day, or I wouldn't finish the book. And my birthday is actually on April 12th, and I spent my 30th birthday. I woke up on an air mattress in a friend's house, and I got up and I went and I wrote, and I never expected my 30th birthday to go that way, but that's what happened. And so in order to do this, in order to write the book successfully, I had to create a process. I'm somebody who only works well if I have like rules and structure, very type A. I don't know if other people are like this. I'm sure you are, some of you. And so I had to create a set of rules, a set of bylaws, in order to make sure that I achieved on time, because I had a lot of people waiting for me. I had Sony, who's the studio, I had ABC, that's the network, I had Disney, that's the publisher, I had Shark Tank, that's the brand, and I had Amazon, that's the audio partner. So all of these huge companies are on phone calls with me saying, where's our book? Where's our book? And it was my first book, it was my first experience, so I had to create some rules. And so I'm going to share those rules with you. Maybe they will help you, whether you're writing essays for college or you have a teacher that's given you a crazy assignment and a crazy due date. The first rule was lights out by 10:30. Now I am not a night person. This is pretty easy for me because I go to bed early. But I made sure that for those 30 days, I was in bed every day by 10:30 because my best work is done in the morning. I'm most creative in the morning. I'm most interesting in the morning. I have my best ideas in the morning. And so I knew in order to maximize that time, I had to make sure that every night, no matter what was happening, no matter what my friends wanted to do, no matter what kind of parties there were, I had to go to bed at 10:30 every night. And I did that. And that's a really crucial part to being successful and to figuring out how to achieve something quickly, is knowing when you are your most productive. Because here's the thing, I was telling some people today, I got here this morning at your school at 6:30 in the morning, which is crazy. Not everyone is productive at 6:30 in the morning. Some people are better at night, some people are better during the day, some people are better in the morning. Right now, you don't have much of a choice because you're going to school every day and you don't get to decide. But going forward in college and moving on, it doesn't matter when you're productive. It might be in the evening, it might be in the morning. You just have to know when that time is and you have to maximize that. There isn't a right or wrong there. The next part is waking up at 5:30. Every morning I would wake up at 5:30. I would go, I'd have some tea, I'd get to my computer, and at 6 o'clock I would start writing. And from 6 to 11:30 every single day I would write, then I would go to the gym, I would grab lunch, I'd be back at my computer by 1, and I'd write for the rest of the afternoon. I had to break it up into 2 different parts. And again, next rule, you've got to hit that word count, 1,950 words a day. When I got the assignment, my editor said to me, okay, so here's the deal, you're gonna write this book, 60,000 words, which eventually turned into 65,000 words. Give it to me on May 1st. He didn't want me to like check in at all during the process. And I said, no, that's not what we're gonna do. I'm gonna send you like different snippets of work throughout the process so that A, I'm accountable, and that B, you can see what I'm doing. And so if I didn't commit to those 1,950 words a day, I would never hit my word limit, and my editor would know that. So I made sure I set up a process in order to be accountable. The next rule was pen down by 4:30. So this is interesting. Most people think, and some people have a different style, but most people think that when you're writing or when you're feeling inspired, or maybe you're a musician and you love music and you're in the middle of composing something, or whatever it is you're passionate about, sports, whatever, that you should keep going until that inspiration runs out. What I found was that when I did that, it wasn't sustainable. I burnt out. The next day I wasn't productive. And so instead of going as hard as I could all the time, I paced myself. Because it was a lot. This was a sprint. This was a marathon. This was not a sprint. And I knew I had to pace myself. So no matter what was happening, even if I hadn't hit my word count, by 4:30, my pen was down every day. And by pen, I mean laptop. This was a big one. No social networking during writing. So I love Facebook and Twitter and Instagram as much as everyone else, but it's way too distracting. So instead of having that window open while I was creating, I closed all the social networks and I gave myself an allotted period of time. 1, maybe 2 or 3 breaks throughout the day where I could check social, where I could see what was going on. Because the fact is that we're all addicted to social media, right? Like, I can't escape it, I can't deny it, I'm on social all day long, my phone's buzzing right now in my pocket. It's just part of the world we live in. But knowing how to back away from that and to have some self-discipline around that was crucial to success. This one, a lot of people might be surprised to hear. 1 hour of cardio 6 days a week. When you're using your brain so much, when you're sitting down, when you're sitting in classrooms all day, it's so important to take a break and to exercise and to allow your body to sort of have some exercise outside of your brain and to exercise other muscles. What I found was at the beginning, when I wasn't doing cardio during the day, my writing in the afternoon, terrible, bad. When I started doing the cardio in the afternoon, the writing really picked up. So I made sure that I was doing cardio every day. And also eating only healthy foods. I'm a pretty healthy eater, not always, but for the most part. I used to actually be 100 pounds heavier than I am now, which isn't the story I told in the last group. That's a whole nother speech. And so I'm very conscious of what I eat and all of that. But healthy food. I was eating like a monk while I was doing this because I knew that what I was taking in was ultimately what I was putting out, and I had to take the best stuff in. Daily scheduled social events. This one's huge. So a lot of people ask me, when I got the book contract, why did you go to Florida? Why didn't you write the book from New York? Why didn't you go to a cabin in the woods? I'm an extrovert. I need to be around people. This is how I recharge, right? Is being around people. But I knew that in New York, my life was too chaotic and crazy. In the city, I'm scheduled every 15 minutes. I have somewhere to be. There's opportunity around every corner. I get more calls than I can handle. And I couldn't be around that when I was writing. But I also couldn't go to the woods and lock myself in a cabin because at the end of the day, I needed to recharge. And so what I did was I went back to where I'm from, I wrote all day long, and then every single night, without fail, I made sure that I had some social event, whether it was an hour or two, dinner, scheduled in. That allowed me to recharge and be fresh the next day. That's just to further what I said earlier, knowing how you work, knowing when you work, and how you can be your most productive. When you start to learn these things about yourself, you're able to create in smarter, better, and faster ways. Next one, save the panic attack for May. Right? So when you're creating something that you have a crazy deadline, or when you're really stressed out, it's easy every single day to wake up and go, oh my God, what am I gonna do? I only have 10 days, I only have 9 days, 8 days, 7 days, 6 days. You can't think about that. Or you're gonna spend all your day worrying about your deadline. It's not even worth it. So what I said to myself was, every time I freaked out, I said, you know what? On May 1st, you get to freak out as much as you want. On May 1st, you can say, oh, what I wrote was terrible, they're not gonna like it, I'm a failure, it's never gonna work out, I'm never gonna write again in my life, but not until May 1st, because otherwise it was gonna be counterproductive. And so eventually, I finished the book, and I went to LA, and I spent a lot of time with the Sharks, and I got to be there for the season 5 they were taping. I was there for a while, and it was amazing to get to learn from these people. I mean, I was doing some press for the book shortly after, I don't remember what paper this was for, and the reporter said, I don't mean to be rude or disrespectful, but do you feel like you learned something while writing the book? I said, well, of course. Any good entrepreneur will tell you they're always learning. You don't reach a certain level of success and stop learning. I'm only 31 years old. If I've stopped learning now, I'm in big trouble. I said, of course, I got an opportunity to hang out with Mark Cuban and Barbara Corcoran and Lori Grenier and Kevin O'Leary. I learned a ton. And I explained that to her in the interview, and I want to share some of the things I learned with them today for you right now. So I'm going to go through each shark and talk about the one thing that I think is really interesting that they taught me, and that's expressed in the book. So what Damon said, it's so important, it's not just about loving your product or service. You've got to love running the actual business. This is something that people forget. A lot of times people say, oh, I want to start this kind of company because I'm passionate about the product. I'm passionate about something that I'm creating. And that's really important. You've got to love your product. You've got to love your service and your business. But the other piece of the puzzle is you've got to love running the actual thing. That means the day-to-day stuff. Actually figuring out, do I love being a business owner? Do I love being an entrepreneur? Because not everybody does. And the fact is that being an entrepreneur and being entrepreneurial is very different. Not everybody in this room will start companies, and that's totally okay. But I would argue that thinking entrepreneurially is important for every single person, whether you work for someone or whether you're an entrepreneur or not. And what he says is when you're a real entrepreneur, when you're operating a business, you have to love the operations. And so something that you're learning in your classes is not only how to create a great product, not only how to sell a great product, but how to actually run a business, because it's so important if you want to be successful. The next, Barbara Corcoran. Barbara's one of my very favorites. She came to the book launch in New York. She's been very supportive. And we share the same point of view on this. She said, speed is your best friend. Ship faster, sell faster, fail faster. You think you know how it's going to go. You think you know what you're going to major in, which, by the way, ultimately is not what you end up doing most of the time. You think that you know what your life's going to look like. It's probably not going to look like that. And you have to know, and you have to be smart enough to know when to embrace that left turn and when to make different decisions. Lori Grenier says you don't need a teacher, you don't need a mentor, you don't need a guru to achieve incredible success. So when I was talking to the sharks, I was interviewing them for the book, I asked them a few softball questions, leading questions, because I wanted to get some information out of them. And I said to her, Lori, you must have somebody who's helped you along the way. Who has been that teacher? Who's been that mentor that's really gone on the limb for you? And I expected her to give me some answer that I put in the book. She said, nobody. I said, nobody? We all have mentors, we all have teachers. She goes, no. She was a playwright in Chicago. I don't know if stuff she wrote ever got published, but she created this thing, this jewelry box that you could put in the back of a door, you could store all your jewelry. She went on QVC, and she got on. It sold really well. So she started creating and creating and creating and creating, and ultimately now she's known as the queen of QVC. She sold more than anyone else in that network. And she says, listen, throughout my life and my career, I didn't have a solid network of teachers and mentors and guides as I went. I figured it out on my own. I did it on my own. And you all are so lucky to have this community. I mean, growing in my high school, we didn't have anything like this. And so you have this infrastructure built right now of people that want to help you succeed, which is fantastic. But even if you don't have this, and you will lose this eventually when you leave the school, you don't need it. You can be successful without people by your side. If you want it bad enough, you can achieve it. And then Mark Cuban, who's definitely the most famous of all the sharks, he talks about that you only need to get it right one time. And a lot of times people think that Mark's in like his 30s or early 40s. Mark's 56, 57. He's been around the block. When he was in his 20s, he was selling powdered milk door to door. Door to door, like selling, he thought powdered milk was like a great business. He got it wrong a lot, many times. He worked for people that got it wrong, he started companies that got it wrong, and then he got it right one time. And he made some money, and he got some credibility, and he used that credibility, and he used that success to do the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. It's really funny, someone in the first group, the very first question that was asked is, how much are you worth? It's just such a bold question. And it's a good question. And I said, probably not as much as you think. When you start a company, when you start a business, you start to make some money, right? You start to get some cash in the door. You start to say, wow, I'm supporting myself. I'm actually like going out there and hunting something and dragging it back to the cave. But if you're a smart entrepreneur, if you're a smart business person, especially when you're starting out, you take all of the money that you make, except the very little you need to live, and you put it right back in the business. A great example of this is, they mentioned I host this show called The Next Crop, which is a web series sponsored by Citrix and powered by Forbes. We're on Forbes.com every week. And it's an interview show that spotlights the next generation of business and media influencers. And I don't only host the show, I produce the show, and I created the show. When I created the show, before I actually spent all the money to shoot, I hired a television crew. I hired a television crew, an editor, makeup people, light people, sound people. I got a set, all of that. Tens and tens of thousands of dollars to create something like that. Before I did that, I went to my potential sponsors and I said, hey, I'm creating this show. Do you want to buy it? And they said, no. You want to create it first and then maybe see if we want to buy it? And I was like, oh, but it's so expensive. And so they're like, no, you got to create it first. So I had to spend all that money to create the show. I had to do on my own. Now, if I hadn't done that, if I hadn't taken all the money that I'm making in speaking and I'm not making money when I'm doing this speech, I'm doing it just for fun, but all the money I'm making in speaking and consulting and media projects, if I had taken that and bought a really nice car, when it came down to create this project, I wouldn't be able to do it. And so I did create it, and then I did sell it, and I used that money to fund the next thing, which is season 2 and some other media projects. So it's so important to use that money and to use that success that you have from getting it right one time to help further the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. So I'm trying to figure out, as I've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs, I'm trying to figure out what are those things that every entrepreneur has in common. A lot of people try to figure that out. Is it perseverance? Is it tenacity? Is it good handwriting? Is it, what is it? What are these things? It's definitely not good handwriting, or I'm out of that group because I have the worst handwriting ever. And what I've discovered thus far, and this might change, but what I've discovered thus far is this. Great entrepreneurs and people who are entrepreneurial, because I want to talk about both. You don't have to be an entrepreneur to be entrepreneurial. People who are entrepreneurial know how to make it work, to perform regardless of the circumstances. How do you write a book in 30 days? You figure it out. How do you start your first company with no experience, not a lot of capital, and no clients? You figure it out. How do you do some of these great things that a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of business people have done throughout history without a lot of knowledge, without a lot of experience? You figure it out. Let's not forget my degrees in musical theater, right? I've never taken a business class. In my whole life, I've never taken one. And I wrote a business book. I did that because I learned by myself, I read a lot, I watched a lot, and most importantly, I just took action, right? Every day I woke up and I said, what am I gonna do today? Great example of that is networking and community is so important. It's such an important part of being successful in this world. Your network is everything. Your community is everything, and I'm not just saying that. It really is. So what I do is I travel a lot. I've been to 14 cities in 5 countries in the last 2 months. I've only been in New York where I live 5 days a month or 6 days a month for the summer. And whenever I'm in a new place, I was just in Berlin a couple weeks ago, I've been in Munich and in Vancouver, and whenever I go someplace new, my goal is to connect with someone who I don't know, who I'd like to know. So I'm in Atlanta, right, where CNN is, and I want to do more broadcast stuff. So I go on LinkedIn, and I look for somebody on the digital side at CNN, because I'm really interested in digital, and I find that person, and I see who we have in common, and I email her, and I say, hey, I'm going to be in Atlanta, this is who I am, this is what I'm interested in, I think you're cool, can I come down to the studio and meet? And yesterday I had a meeting at CNN for an hour to talk about some projects. What I mean by that is using your community and understanding your community is so important, and it's such an important piece of this puzzle, which is figuring out how to make it work. So that's the end of my presentation, because I want to be able to ask questions and answer questions and all of that. So I'm going to turn it over to, that's my contact information. We'll talk about that later, but seriously, feel free to reach out anytime and ask questions if you don't get a chance to ask them today. But I want to open it up and have you ask questions now. So whoever would like to ask questions, raise your hand and I'll answer them. Ask any question you want within reason, and I'll answer. Thank you. You can ask me questions about Shark Tank, about business, about my favorite color, which is blue, by the way. Anything you want, I'm happy to answer. Who's going to be brave? Who's going to be brave? I know someone has a question. Here we go. First brave person. What's my what? What am I worth? That's always the first question, isn't it? I'll answer it the same way I answered last time, not as much as you might think. So I'll tell you this, the first business that I started, I know I didn't really answer your question. I'm going to be a politician one day, so I figured out how to do that. I'll tell you this, the first business I started, within the first 7 or 8 months, we were well into the 6-figure profit. And I don't have a lot of overhead. I hire freelancers, so I don't have to pay staff. I pay them per hour based on what they do, but I bill that back to the client. Very successful in that way. But again, all of that money that I took went either to taxes or into the next project I was working on. Because I'll tell you what, when you're a small business owner, taxes, crazy. It's so much of money you don't even think about it. Next question? Yeah. Oh, failure question again. Okay, I'll give you an example. I have a lot of them. We could turn this just into a conversation on my failures. So when I was 26 years old, I wrote a proposal for a book that I wanted to write, and I have a friend I went to college with him, he's a successful business author, and I said, hey listen, can you pass this on to your agent? And I'm not as much of a perfectionist as I used to be, because being a perfectionist, I don't think it's a very smart idea, but I used to be a really big perfectionist, and so everything about this proposal was perfect. The ideas were perfect. I read every book about how to write a book proposal. I put everything I had for months into this proposal, better part of a year. And I sent it to him, he sends it to his agent, she reads it, she emails me and she goes, hey Michael, seemed really interesting, would love to meet you. I said, oh my gosh, this is it, we have a breakfast, I'm gonna get an agent, my book's gonna be published, this is amazing. We meet for breakfast, we talk for a little while, and she goes, well the good news is, I think you're great, I think you're onto something. The bad news is, this book's never gonna work. It's just absolutely never gonna work. And I was devastated. I mean, I literally spent most of the last year working on this proposal, and she said, no matter what you do, the idea is really not gonna happen. And so that was really devastating, and when I thought about writing a second book or a third book or whatever, it was really tough to do it because I just kept thinking about, God, I put all of this energy into something that didn't work. I started a nonprofit that didn't work, I've worked on projects that have failed, time and time again, and all you can do in that situation, great example, this isn't necessarily a failure, but there was going to be a second Shark Tank book, and that book just ended up blowing up like a week ago. But I was supposed to be from September to December in LA working on Shark Tank 2. Well, that didn't happen. And so a week ago, I find out that the rest of my year is now going to be very different than I thought it was going to be. That's not necessarily a failure, but that's a wrench in the plan. And in that situation, I have two options. I can be disappointed and I can stop doing the work that I want to do, or I can just say, onwards and upwards and move on to the next thing. And that's sort of how you have to treat it. Other questions? Yeah? My first job? Yeah, so I really believe, I've been I love working, and ever since I was a kid, I really believed in working. My first job was when I was 14 or 13. I worked at a bakery. I think it was 14, because you can't work before that. I volunteered for that. On my 14th birthday, how nerdy is this? On my 14th birthday, I swear to God, I opened up the phone book. The morning of my 14th birthday, I got the phone book, I turned to the restaurant section, and I just started calling restaurants going, do you hire 14-year-olds? Do you hire 14-year-olds? Do you hire 14-year-olds? Which is a really creepy question to get. But I just kept calling and asking, do you hire 14-year-olds? Because I really wanted to work, I really wanted to make my money. And I got hired at this place called Valentine's, which was a bakery and a deli, and was there for a little while. And then, does anyone know Perkins? Perkins Restaurant and Bakery? No? Do you know how that here? Yeah, you have. Okay, I'm from Florida. We have them in Florida. Anyway, I worked at Perkins as a server in high school from 15 until I went to college. And people are always like, oh, you work at Perkins. I was like, listen, on Saturdays and Sundays, I was making $100 a day working a breakfast shift at Perkins. In high school, $200 a week for spending money isn't so bad. So I worked at Perkins the whole time, and then I've never not had a job. I've always been really, I was in food service for a while though. I think that's actually a great industry for anyone that wants to get involved in service and work, because you really learn how to deal with people and sell, which is so important. Selling, sell before you're ready. Yeah, the question was, do I miss what I used to do performing? I mean, I get to stand here and talk to you. I don't miss it at all. That's so funny, is that the things that I loved about that career were being able to tell stories, were being able to stand in front of you and talk and share and all of that. I feel like I'm more of an actor today than I was when I was actually an actor. Do I miss singing? Yeah, occasionally, but that's what the shower's for, so it's not that big of a deal. Yeah. What was my favorite video game as a kid? Mario Classic. I was born in 1983. I barely got out of the Pong stage, so I would say Mario and Duck Hunt. Remember that? Mario 1, that was my jam. Questions? Yeah, in the back. Do I only associate myself with business people? Absolutely not. Because of the community that I roam in, I'm lucky to meet a lot of different kinds of business people and entrepreneurs, but my friends run the spectrum of people in fashion and people in entertainment and people in sports. And like I said, your community that you build is so important, but that doesn't necessarily have to be a siloed community with just one group of people. It's important to have a broad spectrum of friends and supporters. Yeah. Do I plan on doing anything else? Yeah, absolutely. So the Next Crop, which is the web series I told you about, we're going into season 2 in January. And season 1 was just me interviewing people, right? It's nice, it's interesting, but it's not as interesting as I wanted it to be. So season 2, we're doing a whole new format. We're doing this panel show. We got a new set. It's going to be really great. That's happening in January. I'm launching a podcast in October. We're just closing the sponsorship deal now called Workaholic for people that are interested in working better, faster, and smarter. And I'm starting daily videos called MPD Live in October. The thing about being an entrepreneur is that you're always looking forward. You're always figuring out what's next, what are you creating. I get bored really easily. And so for me, it's really important to constantly be thinking about the next project. Ultimately, I want to be the Susie Orman of small business. Ultimately, I want a media career. I was talking in the last group, someone asked me, what's the most important piece of advice that you've ever been given? And I changed the question. I said, here's the most important piece of advice I can give you, because it's not a piece of advice, it's a conversation. And I'm telling you, listen closely to this, because this is the smartest thing I'll ever say. I think this is where I top on my smartness. So when I left theater, I felt like the only thing I could do was perform and be in front of the camera and be entertaining. And I was really resentful of that, because I'd done it my whole life. And so I thought, if that's all you can do, I gotta learn some other skills. And so when I left the business, I threw the baby out with the bathwater. I said, I'm not gonna stand in front of the camera. I'm not gonna be the person on stage. I'm gonna be the person behind the scene that makes it happen. Did that for a couple years. I wasn't really that satisfied. I was fine at it. I did well at it, I guess. But I really wanted that other piece of the puzzle. Anyone here watch America's Next Top Model? Or has one? Okay. So Nigel Barker, who's a judge on America's Next Top Model, is a friend of mine and has been for many years. So he was, what? I'm not saying that to be to drop names, but it's an important part of the story. So Nigel was hosting an event in New York, and he said, hey, I want someone to come and do this event with me. You can do a Q&A with me. We'll be on stage for an hour. And I said, yeah, I'll go do this thing, because he's a friend and it seemed interesting. And we did this event in New York. This was during the Domino project with Seth Godin. And we did this event in New York, and I left, and I was walking, I'll never forget this, I was walking back to the train, and I was so thrilled. I was so excited, and I thought to myself, oh my gosh, this is what it is, this is what you do, this is what you're best at, this is what you were put on this earth to do, like, this is what you do. And I got back to the office the next day, and I was in a terrible mood, and I went to Seth, and he could tell I was in a bad mood, and he was like, let's go talk it out. And I went in the back office, and I was like, I don't know what to do. I made this assumption, I made this hypothesis that this performing world was no longer for me, and I made a very different choice, and now I'm sort of in limbo. And out of the conversation came this really important question, the most important question you can ask yourself. What do you want to do versus what do you want to do? Right? So what I mean by that is, are you telling yourself what you want to do because that's something that you actually want to do? Or are you asking yourself what you want to do and the answer is what you would like to want? Great example of that. For years I was saying to myself, all I want to do is move back down south and get a small business and get married and have some kids and live a simple, small life. I was saying that to myself for years and years and years and years. I wish that's what I wanted. That's what I want to want. I want to want that so badly, but ultimately what I want is world domination. Ultimately what I want is to be a brand. Ultimately what I want is to be Oprah. You get a car, everyone gets a car. Like that is ultimately, it's an Oprah joke by the way, maybe you're too young to get that reference. Anyway, that's ultimately what I want. But saying that's what I want is absolutely terrifying. Because when you say you want world domination, when you say you want to be a lifestyle brand, when you say you want all of these things, all of a sudden you're on the line. You're on the line to produce. And admitting that to yourself every single day is a really scary way to exist in this world because it's not easy. And so for me, when I said to myself, what do you want versus what do you want to want? It's not what my teachers want. It's not what my parents want. It's not what I said I wanted 5 years ago. I was talking to someone earlier about what they were going to major in college, and they were asking me if I thought it was the right move. And I said, do you love it? Are you passionate about it? Do you want to have a career in it? And they said, yes. And I said, great, then major in that. However, if you're there at college, and you're a sophomore and you start to realize that there's something else over here that looks more interesting, if there's this other area of focus that you're really passionate about, go that way. Don't stick with something just because you feel like you have to do it. Now that doesn't mean give up on your commitments or responsibilities, but be smart enough to know when there's another opportunity, because most people don't allow themselves the freedom to explore. And that's what this time period's all about. Because I know you're in high school and I don't mean to be patronizing, but you think right now this is like your whole world and this is all-encompassing, and I've been there and I know it. And then you go to college and you have exams and your future's on the line and you think, oh my God, this is my whole world. This is all just practice. This is like great practice, right? Like if you mess up, you're not gonna be able to not pay rent. You're still gonna have, most people will probably still have food on the table, right? Like this is practice. This is the time where you get to experiment and you get to try things. And if you are not trying things every day, you're missing a huge opportunity. So just try. We got off the topic. I get sort of like motivational speaker when I talk about this, Tony Robbins. Yeah, another question. Oh, I thought you were raising your hand. Yeah. Ooh, my favorite theater production I performed in. It was one of the last shows I did. It was called Nerds. It's actually coming to Broadway next year. It's a story about Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. And it's a great show. It'll be in Broadway next year, hopefully. It's been in production for like 10 years. I was doing this back when I was 23. I won't be a part of it, but I was in it then. Yeah. I'm sorry, I can't hear you go on. Do I ever get free time now to accomplish more, or now that I've accomplished more? Yeah. Do I have free time? I guess. I probably should have a more balanced life. So the reason, like I said before, the reason why I'm here is because my girlfriend used to go to the school, and I'm in town for a wedding. We thought, why not? She's actually been great. So here's a story. From the age of 25 to the age of 30, I'm 31, I refused to get into a relationship. Now I would date, I'd go out and meet people, but I refused to be in a relationship, and that was on purpose. And the reason why is because at 24, when I had that big career shift, I knew that if I was going to be successful, I really had to catch up, because I was way behind. Everyone else went to college for business. Everyone else had started companies. I was 24 years old, and I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And so I told myself that the only way I was going to figure it out was if I devoted all my time, all my attention, all my energy to that, and nothing else. And so for 5 years, my life was really unbalanced. I worked 7 days a week. I was telling the other group, I read a business book a week. I did everything I could focused on my career because I knew that was the time, that was the short window I had. Now, I'm a little well-rounded. Eliza has a rule. The rule is no work on Saturdays, which is hard for me. Sundays I have to work in the afternoon or I have to get ready for the week ahead. But she has a no work on Saturday rule, which has helped me be a little bit more disciplined in my time off. There's a question there and there's a question there. I'm gonna go here first and then I'll get you. Yeah. Nope. The question was, would you consider singing a song? Absolutely not. I'm sorry. Come find me afterwards. I'll hum a little something. Yeah. I can't hear you. What? How did I something to start all over? How did I feel about starting all over? So scared. The scaredest I've ever been in my life. When you're 20, I mean, like, you have to remember this. I've been doing this since I was 4 years old. So when you have been doing, how many people in here are like, who play sports or dance or have been doing it for a long time, since you were little? Show of hands. Yeah? A lot of people. So I see a lot of jerseys, so I'm sure a lot of sports people in here. If you do something your whole life, it becomes your identity, and walking away from that career wasn't just walking away from a career, it was walking away from who I thought I was as a person, which is a dangerous move to get so wrapped up in something. It was terrifying, and I didn't know what I was going to do, but the way I saw it, I didn't have another chance. I was either going to be unhappy in this career and do it because I said I was going to do it, or I was going to take a leap and figure out if there was something down the line. And most of the time when you take a leap, there is. Yeah. Do I feel comfortable what I'm doing? You mean talking in front of high schoolers? Not right now. Do I feel comfortable in what I'm doing is the question. I guess. You know, I think that comfort is a weird thing. I feel comfortable right now. There's a group of people looking at me, so it's a little uncomfortable, but for the most part, yeah. But comfort's a dangerous thing, right? We think that comfort and ease is what we're striving for. I'm not so sure that comfort and ease is what we should be striving for. I think being uncomfortable, I think feeling a little uncertain is a really good thing, because it shows you that you're growing, it shows you that you're learning, and again, when we talk about learning in this group, I'm sure you're thinking like book smart classes. That's not the kind of learning I'm talking about. I'm talking about experience. I'm talking about actually taking action and trying things. Am I comfortable? Reasonably. Do I want to be more comfortable? Absolutely not. This is the most comfort that I'm okay with. I like to be discomfort, actually. Yeah. That's so funny. The guy that was sitting right there last time asked that same question. What does my tattoo say? I have a few tattoos. So this one is the word ahimsa, which is a Sanskrit word for non-violence. And then this one here, okay, this one here is the word heart. And this is a really great story. So my grandfather passed away when I was younger, like 8 or 9. And so I have memories of him, but not many. And he left this video for his grandkids. And my aunt asked, you know, what's one thing you want your grandkids to remember when you die and they see this video later? I just found this a few years ago. And he was sort of this like chiseled old Southern guy, you know, like you wouldn't expect him to say something particularly sentimental. And he looked in the camera and he said, you know, the thing I've learned in this world is that you just have to follow your heart. He's like, if you want to be a blue-collar worker, be a blue-collar worker. If you want to be a white-collar worker, be a white-collar worker. If you want to move to China, move to China. If you want, whatever it is that you want to do, you have to stay true to that. And he wasn't, like I said, he wasn't prone to sentiment or cheesiness, but I thought that was really great advice, and it was good enough to get on my arm. So that's one of them. I have another one here. I have, you know. Other questions? Yeah. Do I enjoy being a part of what? Yeah, the cool thing about being a consultant for anyone that wants to have a career as a consultant is that I get to go into a company and I get to help them solve big problems, and I get paid to tell them what's wrong with things, which is a really fun job. A lot of times when you're working in a company, you'll discover this as you become an employee at companies. People are terrified of losing their jobs. Terrified. And so because of it, they don't really speak their mind. They don't really point out when things are going wrong. And companies pay me to come in and go, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. Here's how you fix these things. I really like that. So yeah, I like being able to be a part of different organizations and see sort of how different places work and operate. Yeah, and then I'll get you. How do I feel about small businesses in the economy right now? That is a loaded question. Do you want the honest answer or do you want the safe answer? Honest answer? I think that, I'll say this. It's easier now than ever to start a small business in this country, right? Because of technology, because of all of these things that we have access to, it's easier. That being said, in some ways it's harder. There's, people talk about taxes and all this stuff, and as a small business owner, I didn't realize until I was in the thick of it how much money you spend on taxes and how small business gets taxed in this country. And so I think that this country could be a little bit more welcoming to small business, but it's a hard ticket to sell. I think everyone should try it. I think everyone should try to be an entrepreneur, but there are definitely challenges in the economy with starting a small business. It's not easy, and you face things that you wouldn't have to face if you weren't on your own. So it's difficult. I'm not gonna lie, it's difficult. Yeah. What kind of car do I drive? Well, I live in New York City. So most people in New York City don't have a car. I have a car, as it turns out, but it's just a crappy old Toyota. But no one in the city really has a car. But I'll tell you this, even if I lived in a place that I have to have a car, I would not get a nice car. I'm not there yet. You have to earn that, and I have not earned that. I'm 31 years old. If I'm not taking everything that I make and putting it back into my business, I'm doing myself a huge disservice. It's tempting when you get checks for tens of thousands of dollars and sometimes more to take that money and to go buy something that's awesome, but I promise you it's a terrible idea to put it right back into the business if you want to be sustainable. I've made that mistake. Yeah. The most famous person I met. Well, Ikaratze, we covered a lot of celebrities, so I've met a lot of famous people. This guy right over here, Dr. Wayne, most famous guy. I don't know, Leonardo DiCaprio. Well, I used to interview celebrities. No, hold on. I'm not friends with Leonardo DiCaprio. I used to interview celebrities for my job. At Ikaratze, we covered celebrities, so I used to go to parties with lots of celebrities. It's not, once you meet like one celebrity, it's not that big of a deal. They're just normal people who have way more money than all of us combined. Next question, yeah. How long have my girlfriend and I known each other? We have been together for almost a year. Yeah, a year in October. Aw, cute. Yeah, she's the best. Really. Other questions about me or my girlfriend? Yeah, you do. Yeah. How do we meet? Online. Yeah. Online dating, don't knock until you try it. Here's the thing about online dating. I'm so busy. Where else am I gonna meet someone? At a bar? Yeah. Sorry, everyone's riled because of my online dating confession. Am I on Wikipedia? I'm not on Wikipedia, but I should be. You wanna help me get on? It's really hard. What's my what? LinkedIn account. In / Parrish DuDell. But seriously, just my name. No one else in the world has my name, so just Google it and Google LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, find me on all that stuff and feel free to friend me, message me. All right, you, and then I have a feeling she's gonna talk to my girlfriend, so I'm gonna say that for a second. What's yours? Am I on Google Images? Yeah, is there, yeah, I mean, like everyone else in this world, we're all tracked on Google, so you can find all my stuff on Google. I'm on Google Images. Have I ever had like negative attention? Is that the question, or? Hold on, quiet everyone so I can hear you saying. What's it? Yeah, I've had people write nice things about me. Not really when I was a business person, but when I was covering stories, some people didn't like what I had to say, and actually twice I had to get things taken down because they were personal attacks. That's not fun. And but that's a bigger way. That's actually an opener for a bigger conversation about what we put online, right? Like we're all putting selfies and we're all putting all of our like junk online. And the fact of the matter is that everything is so searchable, and especially when you're applying for jobs or starting a job, everyone searches Google, so it's really important to be conscious of that. I promised I'd get to her, and then I'm gonna get to you too. Yeah. What was it like meeting Leonardo DiCaprio? I said, hi, I'm Michael, I have a couple questions for you. And he said, okay, go ahead. And I asked them. And that was the extent of it. Yeah. Oh, we're running late. Okay, we're running low on time. I'm gonna give the mic to Dimitri. Thank you so much for your questions and your attention. Really appreciate it. And like I said, thank you. And like I said, if you have questions that you didn't get a chance to ask, community is everything, and I welcome you to reach out to me as a resource. All my information's there. Find me on Twitter, email me. Thanks again, y'all. Here's Dimitri.
Hey everybody. First we would like to thank Mr. Parrish for coming to, Mr. DuDell for coming to our school. And we want to acknowledge some of the entrepreneurs that we have in our school right now. This is Carmen. She participated in a entrepreneurship competition where she won $20,000 with her group. We'll let her talk a little bit more about it.
All right, hey guys, my name is Carmen Liu. I'm a junior at Fisher Ridge, and last year I took the class, entrepreneurial class, with Dr. Wayne and Ms. Tan. And at the end of the semester, we turned our business model and our business plan, and we entered a business competition that was Gwinnett-wide. And my group and I, along with Anna Kim and Eric Vu, we won first place in this competition. So we've been offered many great opportunities, and we hope to really start this business and get this going. So I want to thank you, Dr. Wayne and Ms. Tan, and all of our friends and family that's been there for us. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for listening.
All right, so basically our business is Best Paw Forward. We are an online dog clothing website that sells all dog clothing at a single price of $12.99, and we plan to offer free shipping and just many perks to our customers to show them our gratification.
Thank you, everybody. Please remain seated. We're not done yet. Well, we are done, but please remain seated until the bell rings. So everybody, you heard that already.